In this episode, we're diving into one of the most talked about developments in education, artificial intelligence. From powerful general tools like ChatGPT to new systems built specifically for schools, AI is becoming a part of the everyday landscape in education. But with so many options, the real challenge is understanding what's genuinely effective for teachers and school leaders. We'll be exploring where AI is already making a difference, how to separate novelty from real value, and why context matters when choosing the right tools for your school. We'll also be sharing some really exciting insights on what the National College has to offer in the AI space and makes us unique as a provider. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Darren Coxon, who has been at the forefront of educational technology for many years. Darren, thank you ever so much for being with us today.
It's a real pleasure, always.
So let's start with the big picture. How would you describe the current pressures that school leaders and teachers are facing today?
I think it's the same pressures that school leaders and teachers have probably faced for many, many years. I guess the main one is workload. I think we're finding more and more school leaders coming under increasing external pressures. We're finding more and more teachers needing to do more and more, whether that be planning lessons or assessing work or so many different administrative functions that teachers have. I just feel like we've reached the point probably where everyone is just kind of feeling a bit burnt out, and they're just desperately looking for solutions. They're looking for just support across the board. It's a tough place to be right now. I think being a teacher and a school leader is a pretty tough place to be.
I think that will definitely resonate with a lot of our listeners today. And so moving on to talk a little bit about AI, which is our topic of the day. We are hearing a lot about AI in education at the moment. But what is the difference between platforms like ChatGPT, which is a very general platform, versus using an AI that is specifically built into an education platform like the National College to potentially solve some of those issues you've just been discussing?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think the more time I spend working with AI, the more I recognize just how important context is. So when you're working with a general purpose AI like ChatGPT, it's potentially going to give you quite a generic response. So if you put in a prompt, you want a lesson plan on a certain subject, if you just literally just prompt ChatGPT, the likelihood is that you may get a good response, but it's more likely that it will be a very generic response because it's basically taking its response from its training data, and it's, in a way, almost guessing what's its best guess as to what you might want in response. The more you can ground the response in context, whether that be exam syllabuses or whether that be guidance documents, pedagogical principles, whatever it is, the more likely you are to get a more accurate and useful response. So I think if you can bring AI inside an educational platform, particularly one that has a lot of specific data, I think you're much more likely to get a useful and an accurate response, less likely to hallucinate or make stuff up, and just more likely to fit what you need.
When you're talking there about an educational platform having a lot of data, what kind of data are we talking about there?
It could be course data. So it might be a particular course on a particular subject, for example, best practice for how to teach English literature, or the best way to manage behavior and create engaging openings for lessons, that kind of thing. So I suppose it's like foundational principles. If you can bring those inside the chat so that when, let's say a teacher asks for 5 lesson openings for their lesson on to teach the opening of Macbeth, if the platform actually has some specific data and specific information on engaging openings, and it can bring that in, it's much more likely to give the user, the teacher, just useful stuff and stuff that they can then employ from day one.
So stuff that's based on the expert-led content rather than stuff that's based on a whole wealth of data that might not be relevant.
That's exactly right. So I think bringing that expertise inside the platform, it's almost as if you've got the teacher, the AI, and the expert, and it sort of forms 3 legs of the stool, if you like. So the user can ask a request, the teacher can request something from the AI, But because that expertise is being pulled through, you're just more likely to get a useful answer.
That's really good. I think that's really provided a lot of clarity around the difference between what something like ChatGPT could provide and something that's integrated or built in could provide. So as you're speaking there, I think you already touched a little bit upon this, but why is this integrated or built-in AI such a game changer for teachers and leaders?
So I think teachers and leaders just don't have the time to be working with general purpose AI that may not give them what they need. They need to go to a tool. For example, it might be a lesson planning tool or a resource creation tool or a scheme of work creation tool or policy tool. And they know that they're going to go to that tool and it's got that expertise already ready to go. It's literally like walking into a room and you've got a team of experts and you know to go to that one expert rather than walking into a room and it's just a big group of people and you're not really sure who is the expert in the room. The teachers and leaders can go to that expert and they can get the response they need, and it's just going to save them time.
That is such a helpful way to frame it. What an interesting way to look at it. So now moving on to some real world examples. Can you share some examples of how AI is helping educators right now, both in the classroom and in the wider school environment?
I mean, you may be surprised to hear that I don't really think at the moment AI is making as much of an impact as some might like. I mean, we've had ChatGPT around for about 2.5 years. I would still say that the vast majority of teachers are either not using AI or you haven't even heard. But yeah, I think it's getting less and less, certainly the work I'm doing with schools across the world. When I'm asking educators what their experience is, increasingly people are saying, yes, I've tried ChatGPT or Google Gemini or sometimes Claude. But by and large, there isn't really, what I'm not hearing and it's completely transforming my teaching and it's completely transformed my classroom and my kids are so much more engaged now. I'm just not hearing that at the moment. What I'm tending to hear is it's saving me a bit of time here and there. What I'm often also hearing is it's actually not saving me much time at all because I'm spending so much time checking the response and making sure the response is accurate that actually it would have been just as easy for me to do the work myself. So it feels like we're kind of heading in the direction where AI is becoming increasingly useful, hence what we're talking about now, narrowing it down and focusing on expertise. But I would say that to date, most of the teachers that I work with are saying, yeah, it's not really being that helpful at the moment. I think it will be in future, but right now it's not providing the sort of impact that I might like.
It sounds like teachers are curious, but perhaps a little bit cautious. So what would be your advice for educators who are hesitant or really new to using AI in their daily workflow?
One word, play. Okay, play with the tools. So I think we immediately think AI is really serious and we've got to do this, this, and this. I would say that start by just playing with it. Set aside a couple of hours in the evening, maybe an hour or so at the weekend. Take a particular tool. It doesn't really matter what the tool is. And just see what happens. Chat to it, literally to the point where you can even start a conversation and say, I kind of want to do this, but I'm not really sure where to start. What do you suggest? I think a lot of people would be quite surprised at if they actually saw how I interacted with AI, because it's very organic. So I just literally don't get too stressed about it. Don't take it too seriously. Play first. Get comfortable with the interaction. And at that point, you can start to think about the lesson planning and the resourcing and the whatever it is you want to do, or maybe even introducing it to your students if they're a little bit older. But don't go into it trying to do too much. Play and experiment. It's actually a really playful tool, way more than any other tool that I've certainly worked with. And I think that's just the best way in.
So talking about play, how can having AI integrated into a trusted platform help make this first step a little bit easier for educators?
That's a fantastic question, actually. So the single biggest challenge that we have at the moment with AI in education is safety, security, data protection. Everyone is terrified of saying something to ChatGPT and that data finding its way somewhere that they have no control over. And that's actually a very real concern. A lot of these tools have no guard. They have safeguarding guardrails, but they often don't have data protection guardrails. if you just use ChatGPT straight out of the box, you log in, you start to chat with it, that data will almost certainly find its way back to OpenAI, who are the company who own ChatGPT, and it will almost certainly be used by the AI model to improve. Because these AI models are almost like a digital version of the human brain. I mean, the architecture is different, but you can conceptually imagine them like a digital version of a human brain. And in the same way that humans need to be fed for their brains to grow, AI is the same, and it needs our data. So it wants our data. And so most of these companies go out of their way in many respects to get hold of our data. So I think that if you can be working with a platform that's data secure, where you know that interaction that you're having with AI is not leaving the platform, you're much more likely to be comfortable experimenting because you know that those safeguards are already in place. So I think it's like a sandbox, what we would call a sandbox. You can play inside the sandbox knowing that that's where it begins and ends. So I think for me, that's probably the biggest advantage of using a platform. Have those interactions and you'll feel confident because you know that data is going to stay safe.
Brilliant. And so within that safety, within that sandbox, what does play look like for someone who has never experienced an AI tool before?
So open it up and literally just, let's say it's a lesson planning tool, and you can just start by saying, I'm beginning a scheme of work on Macbeth. I'm saying Macbeth, I was an English teacher. I'm beginning a scheme of work on Macbeth next half term. Give me a few ideas. How can I make the opening of this scheme of work interesting for the students? What can I do to engage them from day one? Start with questions. We often think we need to have this great big long initial prompt where we tell it it needs to be a certain role and we give it lots and lots of instructions. And actually often the best way to start is just by asking a question. I know what I want. I know the outcome is I want to create an engaging opening to my course. But I'd like some ideas. And of course, if the expert is an expert on pedagogy, it could be literally an expert on engaging lesson openings. And it's going to take its training data about what it understands about Macbeth. And it might take some data about what it understands about the exam syllabus and what the assessment objectives are. And it's going to take some information about expertise on openings. And it's going to combine them together. And what it will give you, 3 or 4 ways of engaging an opening. You read them and you go, that one. And you literally then just write, okay, I really like option number 2. Let's explore that together. And just see it like questions and exploration. Honestly, be amazed at what you get, because then it just becomes a back and forth. It's literally, it's like having an expert beside you, where you're just having a conversation to see where it goes.
That sounds really exciting and really achievable as well. And so beyond the classroom, though, how can school leaders benefit from built-in AI tools when it comes to performance reporting, strategic planning, or whole school improvement?
So again, it goes back to the narrowing what the AI gives to you. So let's say that the school leader is needing to work on updating their policy. You absolutely want to make sure that AI is pulling through very, very accurate data. If you work with ChatGPT, it may be that its training data is out of date, and that can often happen. So you get, so all of these AI tools, general purpose AI tools like ChatGPT and Google Gemini, they all have what's called a model training cutoff date. So an example would be the current model of Google Gemini, its training data is cut off in January of this year, which means that it's already 5 or 6 months out of date. And so if something has happened in that interim period, it's not going to know. And it will be absolutely convinced that what it gives you is up to date. In fact, you can even push back and say, no, we're now in May or June. And it will say, no, we're not. We're in December or we're in January, because that's when its training data has been cut off. So when you're working with a platform and it can pull through literally the most up-to-date data, then as a school leader, you can feel confident because you know that what it's going to give you is, as of the moment that it pulls it through, is completely up to date. And I think that works across the piece with leadership. You have to be working with the most up-to-date data, particularly when it comes to compliance, The worst thing that you can possibly do is to be drawing on some sort of out-of-date government policy, because then you're potentially going to get yourself in a lot of hot water.
Absolutely. So that confidence is key. You were speaking earlier how leaders and educators are talking about the time they're spending on checking the ChatGPT or the Claude response. And so I guess with an integrated solution with the education platform, you're saving that time finally.
Yep.
And so for educators listening today, what is the easiest way to get started with AI besides play, as you said, and what support does the National College offer to help take these first steps?
So I think the first step, the great thing about the tools that you're developing is the fact that they are, again, very specific. So I think the first thing to do is to think about what problem you want to be solved. So that's the first thing. And it will be something like, I'm starting a new scheme of work, or I'm struggling with the middle of my lessons because they're just flagging, or I really want some support with different types of assessment. I just want to mix things up with assessment because I'm just tired of setting the same quizzes and I'm tired of setting the same essay homeworks, and I just want to do something different. So I think start with the problem that you want to have solved, number one, and then look for the tool that best matches that. So on the National College platform, you have a suite of tools, and just think, okay, so I want to improve my lesson openings. Okay, let's look to see whether there's a particular tool which helps with that. Or I want to really challenge how I assess students. So let's look at a tool. Or I really need some support with creating engaging worksheets, or whatever it is, doesn't really matter. Whatever the problem is, look for the tool that can best support that. Because again, it's like I was saying, you're going into a room and you're thinking, I need to do this. You're the person I need to speak to. Let's have this conversation and let's just see where it takes us. So that's start with the problem. I mean, if you literally just want to explore, as I said, just have a play. But if you know there's a particular problem that you need to have solved, that's when you look for the right tool for the job.
So with those tools, it all sounds incredibly approachable. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm really excited to give that a go on the National College platform as well.
Brilliant.
Thanks ever so much for being with us today, Darren. And thank you so much to our listeners as well. If you're not yet a member of the National College, now's the perfect time to join thousands of schools across the country, accessing expert-led professional development, compliance management, people development, and now Teacher and Leader AI, all in one place. Visit nationalcollege.com to learn more.